Usually I don't use these, I just shout really loud because I shout quite a lot all the time. But I'm from an organisation called Sustainable Coastlines. I'd first of all like to acknowledge the team from On the Edge who have very kindly hosted us all here tonight. There's been some amazing speeches. I've been really inspired by all the people that I've heard here tonight, and I feel quite humbled that you had me along here to say a few words as well. Now I'm just going to sort of crack into a bit of a story. I want you all to think about an everyday situation. A man called John goes running up a hill. He goes into the dairy and he buys a bottle of water. He rips the cap off straight away because he's thirsty, you know. And he rips into that bottle of water and drops the cap, the bottle cap on the street. Now, let's assume for the purposes of this story that it's Titirangi in Auckland, above Auckland City, up in the mountains. When it rains, which happens quite a lot in Auckland, and apparently in Wellington too, I've been here a week or two and it's been a bit savage, but that bottle cap is very likely to go into the drain. Okay, it's skipped one forward and that's fine because when it goes through the stormwater system, it's going to go right through down Queen Street and it's going to go out into Waitemata Harbour. So here's a map showing the sort of city centre of Auckland. The chances are there's a really good chance that that bottle cap is going to land on Rangitoto Island, which is up there. Now that's a volcano, an iconic place for the whole city of Auckland, and it is unfortunately covered in tons and tons of plastic rubbish. We went out there last year, and this is the kind of thing that we'd see. A crew of us removed sacks and sacks of rubbish from this place, and this is the kind of stuff that we ended up uncovering. Now these tiny little plastic balls are called nurdles. I'll go back, I can do that, eh? There you go. These are called nurdles. They're also known as mermaid's tears. What they are is virgin plastic, and you can see the tiny little balls amongst it, and then also smaller bits of plastic of different colours that have broken up. Now, they're almost impossible to pick up, and it's infuriating because you can see how damaging this can be when you look into it a little bit further. Now, let's assume that John's bottle cap doesn't get caught by the volcanic rocks here on Rangitoto and goes a little bit further out into the Gulf. The prevailing southwesterly winds, which are the same winds that we have all over New Zealand most of the time, it's skipping twice, but that's okay. There's a good chance it's going to land on Rangitoto Island. No, sorry, on Great Barrier, which is the final frontier of the Hauraki Gulf in terms of the islands that are sitting there. Now, we went out there, and what we found was nurdles again. We then, to give you an example of just how much rubbish is turning up from the city of Auckland and landing on the pristine coastline of Great Barrier Island. Last year, we picked up 2.8 tonnes of rubbish from the west coast, which faces Auckland City, over the course of 2 days. This year, we went back there with a similar group, and we picked up 3.1 tonnes of rubbish off the same beaches. And I'm not talking about the people of Great Barrier as being dirty, because the beaches that they live on are pristine. They are cleaning them up constantly, because trash is constantly arriving. I'm talking about the ones where no one lives. I'm talking about uninhabited coastline where it's really hard to get to, and it kind of makes it a fun event because it's a real challenge. Now, Great Barrier, as I said, is the final frontier. If John's bottle cap doesn't hit Great Barrier, it will continue out into the immense Pacific Ocean. Now, one place in the Pacific which we know pretty well is Tonga. It's one of many Pacific islands. There's a small group in the islands of Tonga called the Ha'apai Islands. And this is a map of some of the Ha'apai Islands where we went and did a big project last year. Now, there is a whole heap of issues with a very low-lying atoll like this. It is impossible to build a landfill that's going to last. Because if you do, the trash basically decomposes, the organic material, and it decomposes, you get leachate, which goes into the water table underneath the island, and this is essential for people to live. It's the water that they've grown their crops with. So you cannot actually build a landfill here. But New Zealand is currently sending this area 40% of their imports come from New Zealand. So if John's bottle cap misses, now it's a very small chance it's going to land on those particular islands, I know. There's a few islands out there, but those are just one out of many. Even if the bottle cap doesn't hit the harpies, many tons of plastic rubbish will get there anyway through what we're sending there that they're buying for their food. Basically, with no system like that, people are forced to dump rubbish like this on the beach. If they don't dump it on the beach, they burn it. They burn it in their backyards, they burn it anywhere they can. And I mean, you see this every day when you walk around. And it is common not just to the Harpai Islands, this is common amongst all the small island states where there's no waste management system. And it's happening a lot. And the more you look into it, the scarier it becomes. So you can see people are burning all kinds of plastic trash in here. When you're burning in your backyard some kinds of plastic, polyvinyl chloride, which is PVC, for example, you burn that in your backyard, you get incomplete combustion. So it's not like doing it in a proper incinerator. It's lighting a fire with some sticks and throwing your plastic on it. You see this horrible black smoke. What comes out of plastic like PVC when you burn it are called dioxins. Now, dioxins, they're actually pretty scary. We started looking into this. We wanted to know what the hell was going on when we saw people burning plastic. And dioxins are actually the same thing that were used in the Vietnam War with Agent Orange. And this is what you get with Agent Orange in the long run. These kind of horrible birth defects that happened after the Vietnam War. What happened there was basically the US Army were throwing these chemicals on the jungle so that it deforested the jungle, and then they could find all the North Vietnamese that were hiding in there. So these chemicals they're the same chemicals from burning plastic, deforest. And you'll also see it in New Zealand farms, where farmers, they generally burn all their trash in a rubbish pit. You'll never be able to grow anything on that piece of land again. That's it, once you've had dioxins on it. And they travel through ash, so the ash goes onto the roof of the house. The rainwater is the water that they drink, and that's happening on a frequent basis out in these islands. I mean, I saw it myself. It goes through the plants, it goes through the animals, it just gets scarier and scarier. To make it even worse, these guys are starting to rely on this food that we're sending them, packaged in plastic or shrunk wrap in plastic around the containers, and that's all the trade. All the containers have shrink wrap around them, and when there's no system to dispose of it, it's just going onto the beach or it's getting burned. What happens there is that they can't actually grow food in their backyard anymore, so it's a vicious cycle. They need more and more plastic because they can't grow any more food. Talking about vicious cycles, I'll take you to the next slide. Here's 5 spots in the ocean, and they're called oceanic gyres. One of them has been a lot more studied than the rest, and it's the one in the North Pacific, which is off from the west coast of the United States. That big red area there is the North Pacific gyre. If the bottle cap, that's where it's going to end up, probably. If it doesn't hit any of the islands, John's bottle cap goes into the current, it'll end up in one of these spots. Now, plastic does not biodegrade. What that means is there's no bacteria that can break down plastic, okay? It does photodegrade, and this is what we find during our cleanup events. Plastic will smash into these tiny, tiny little pieces, and it's kind of like the noodles. It's infuriating. You try and pick it up and it smashes, and then you're just like, and it just almost becomes impossible. But the real problem with these tiny pieces of plastic is that they look like food for animals. They appear like plankton and like krill. And so another problem about these gyres, and I'll quickly go back to it, the gyres are where there's no wind in these places, okay? It's where the currents go round in circles, so the currents converge and just go in a circle. And it's kind of like nature has pulled these soups of plastic. And a lot of people think it's like an island. It's not. It's like a soup. It's like a chicken noodle soup that you really don't want to eat. But it looks like food to the birds, and that's the same place where they feed. So what you get is over 100,000 marine mammals every year are being killed by ocean trash, and over 1 million seabirds. Most of these are ones that feed on offshore over on the ocean. So that takes me to a place called Midway Atoll. Now, you can't see it because it's far too small. A tiny atoll. Now, basically, you saw where it was. It's in the middle of the Pacific. There's basically no one living anywhere near there. And it was an old US World War II airstrip that now has a big albatross colony. And what people who are studying it have started to find is that because the adult albatross are eating all this plastic out of the water, they're then feeding it to their chicks. And those two photos here are albatross chicks that have been fed plastic by their parents, and they'll take whatever their parents give them. I mean, you know, you trust your parent to feed you the right thing. And so their stomachs are filling up, they're being perforated when it's sharp. Otherwise, they feel like they're full and then they're starving to death. And this is albatross from Midway Atoll in its natural place where it died. These are real photos. When you look at trying to deal with this problem, it's a matter of cutting it at the source. So here's a photo from LA River, and that's a digger picking up plastic that's being caught in a net. You know, this is like the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff, this thing, you know, and it's a net. The small bits like the noodles are still going to get out from that. So that takes us to, okay, what are we actually going to do about this? You know, how are we going to try and stop this kind of thing from happening? It's impossible to try and sift through this gyre and pull all the gyres, all 5 of them, and pull all this plastic out because they're tiny. They are literally microscopic. You need a microscope to see all the bits that you'll get from a sample. And if you try and dredge that out, you're going to kill every little piece of plankton in there, which is what we need for oxygen to breathe and to live. So how do you motivate people to do something about it? Now, some people, they look at the bird photos and they're like, okay, you know, I don't actually really care about birds. I don't care about anything unless it involves humans and me, because some people just think like that. So that takes me to this image here, which is a fish that was dissected with 17 pieces of plastic in its gut. Now, to talk about this dynamic, we eat fish, right? The fish eats the plastic, we eat the fish. Plastic comes from oil, which means that it's lipophilic. And what that means is that it draws in toxins from all the environment around it. Now, these are not just any old toxin like you see your petrol and it says ecotoxic. No. I'm talking about things like DDT, which is an insecticide, which is illegal in the United States. And bisphenol A, which is BPA. And this is a chemical which has extremely high levels of estrogen. And I mean, this is one possible way to motivate people to do something about it. This chemical BPA, in the deltas of Florida, which are extremely polluted, the male alligators can no longer reproduce, a whole bunch of them, because they've been ingesting too much plastic, and the male alligators' penises have shrunk too small for them to have sex. So if that's not enough motivation for men and women, I don't know. But when you start looking at the fact that this is going into our food chain, into humans' food chain, plastic and those toxins bioaccumulate as they go up the food chain. Now, what that means is that, you know, a little fish eats a bit of plastic, a big fish eats that fish. It gets worse as it goes into the bloodstream of that fish. Then someone catches that fish, and we end up getting it in a nice bit of polystyrene with Glad wrap over it in our fish market here, and we think, oh, yay, you know, here's a nice bit of tuna. We eat that, and it becomes even worse in us, because our body tissue is fatty. it is also lipophilic. So we absorb all of these toxins, and our body wants them. It's because we've got fatty tissue. And that means that our body can't break them down either. So this process is just, it gets worse as you look into it more and more. So that's the relation to actually affecting humans. To go to our story, we started in the Galapagos Islands, and I can explain how we were motivated to start doing something about it. We went on a trip on this lovely old boat. There's the Galapagos, so that's off the coast of Ecuador in South America, the islands there. It's an amazing place. You should all try and get there one day to check it out. It is truly, truly inspiring. It's where Charles Darwin got a lot of inspiration for his theory of evolution, from seeing the different species and how they'd evolved on these different islands here. We went as volunteers on this beautiful old fishing boat called El Manuel Señor de los Reyes. And you can see that there's trash all over the roof. We went out with the national park as volunteers, picking up rubbish. We didn't know anything about this back then. We were in the Galapagos to go surfing and diving and check out the weird animals and the beautiful animals that you see. And this was quite inspiring, seeing these type of things and experiencing that. And then out on this trip, in an uninhabited coastline, we start finding animals like this endemic Zayapa crab. Endemic means only comes from the Galapagos Islands. You don't find that anywhere else, so it's kind of important to look after it. And swimming with turtles, swimming with manta rays, and then at the same time picking up their babies wrapped in trash. And so that was where we started with this motivation. In Tonga, it was these humpback whales. The Ha'apai Islands where we went for this huge project, and I won't go into all the details because I'm talking about issues here. I'm not really talking about us, but this is the kind of thing that will motivate people to do something about it. If you get in the water with a humpback whale and swim with it and have that experience, you'll think twice about grabbing a plastic bag from the supermarket when actually you probably could carry all of that stuff in your hands. You forgot your eco bag or whatever it is, which is also made of plastic. But if you forget that, you can probably carry it. If you don't, plastic bags end up in the water, and juvenile humpback whales end up playing with them, and you go, well, that's pretty wrong to me when you've spent that time in the water. So if you do get a chance, anyone here, please get in the water with a humpback whale. It will change your life. Some people say, well, hold on. That's Tonga. You're talking about Tonga, Galapagos, Midway Atoll. How does that affect me? I'm in New Zealand. Look after your own backyard. It's their problem. It's someone else. This is a pied shag that one of our crew found near Whakatane, and it's wrapped up in fishing line and fishing hooks. And it was a big moment for him finding that. He approached it and it died. He watched it die, and he was pretty emotional when he saw it. And I hate to be getting heavy, but actually the problem's pretty common here. This is a carcass of a dead albatross found out on Tidai Head in Dunedin. It's not like the other images because it was just they found it and it was probably raining in Dunedin. But Tidai Head is a lot of tourists go there to see these albatrosses. It's quite fantastic to see, and then seeing this just makes you really bring it home to say, actually, this is happening here too. It's an international problem. It's a global problem. It's not isolated to anywhere. So how do you do it? What do you do to make, really get people thinking about it and doing something about it? We don't have all the answers, We've just got our approach, which is pretty simple. You start with some education. So get people together, teach some ideas about why you're doing it. I mean, start showing them some of those photos of some of those albatross and say, this is what happens if you don't think about it. You need to be, what we have seen is that it's important for them to gain that understanding of the ecology of the matter, but very briefly, because it's applicable to anyone. These kids here are very young, but it's applicable to a 30-year-old who's got 2 degrees, who knows nothing about any of this stuff. I mean, it's educational for anyone. And then it goes into a practical activity. So the actual activity of picking up trash, it's not going to fix the problem, but it's going to raise the awareness. And if you get kids out there, which is what we've been doing, picking it up, and actually enjoying themselves, which is the key. And someone else said it before, it was Moses. It's fun and learning at the same time, you know, and to us, that is the most important thing. These two kids here, they found this tire, and they were so proud of the fact that they'd found a tire. They were beaming. I mean, look at their faces. They were absolutely stoked. And just seeing that, them associate that activity of just simple as, and anyone can do it. I mean, you know, little bits, it's quite good because the little kids with their little hands can pick up the little bits of plastic, and then the bigger boys can go and grab the barrier arm that's fallen off the Auckland Harbour Bridge and float it out to Great Barrier Island, you know, like there's something for everyone. I mean, we've had, in one event, we had one participant that was working in the same place as a 77-year-old man, you know, and they both loved it. I know that the 1-year-old loved it. He told me personally, you know. But it's all about also collaboration. So I guess, you know, I'm wearing my red socks today. We work with anyone and everyone who wants to come and help. I'd love to work with all you people. You know, you can get in touch with me really easily. It's handy. My cell phone number's on the website, so I get lots of interesting people ring me. But you know, to finish up, here's some happy kids, and that's us. Basically, you know, you can look into all the issues, but if you can have people create that pride in their local beach, in their local place where they live, their local street, and enjoy the fact that they're looking after it, you know, they will build that pride, and then they will transmit that out into their homes. It's not just the big event, you know, that we do. It's when they go home, and it's them and their friends and their family. And it's John and his bottle cap, who should have just, all he had to do was put it in the bin. Thanks for listening to me.